Call of the Dead is an incredible zombie map. However, not everyone is of this opinion. From the fog and mini-boss to the atmosphere and map layout, Call of the Dead is one of those maps where you either love it or you hate it. The map has this way of gripping you by the throat, and either you like being choked or you don't. Pause. Call of the Dead is not an easy zombie map by any means, but the Easter egg isn't that bad. So why is it that this map is such a median for fans? Why is it that some people love this map while others hate it, and it feels like there is hardly any room in the middle for those who just think the map is okay? That is what I aim to discuss in this video. To explore the map, the story, the characters, the layout, and the setting, but also to try and understand the map's dilemma, to break down the reason as to why this map is such a divide in the community. Before this video starts, I just want to give a big thank you to all of you for your support. I love making videos like this, and clearly y'all enjoy watching them. So, if you could take the time now to click that like button, I would really appreciate it. Also, subscribe to get notified about future videos and live streams. I'd also like to give a shout out to my channel members. If you would like to support me and what I do, you can become a channel member. By becoming a channel member, you'll get access to all of my video essays up to a week early. So, if that's something you're interested in, become a channel member today. Up until the release of Call of the Dead, the zombie mode had a formula. There was a system that made Call of Duty Zombies what it is, and why it was fun. You would load into the map, earn points to buy new weapons, and try to survive to the highest round you could. There had been additions to the mode that made the gameplay loop a little more interesting, such as perks or the Pack-a-Punch machine. However, the formula very much stayed the same across all of these maps. Even when a new game launched, Black Ops, the formula remained unchanged. Get points, get better weapons, get perks, upgrade your weapons, and survive. That was the formula. Call of the Dead did not uproot this formula, nor did it completely change it. The map remains the same in terms of the gameplay loop, as any zombie map should. It's what makes the zombie mode what it is. However, Call of the Dead completely changed how this formula was executed. When attempting to climb to high rounds, typically the player would get prepared by buying all of the perks they wanted, getting the weapons they needed, and upgrading them. They then would find a location they wanted to use as a training spot and proceed to kill zombies round over round. Call of the Dead allows you to do this, but not for very long. You see, Call of the Dead was the first zombie map to introduce a proper boss. In previous zombie maps, bosses would be considered the dog rounds from World at War maps and Kino der Toten from Black Ops, or the monkey rounds from Ascension, or the Pentagon Thief from 5. However, Call of the Dead gave us a true boss zombie. This boss zombie prevents the player from staying in a location for too long because he slowly follows you around the map. And if he gets to you, he can kill you almost instantly with a single hit if you do not have the perk Juggernog equipped. The boss zombie of Call of the Dead doesn't allow you to train in a location for very long, forcing you to run around the map to find a new location. This completely changes the concept of training that had been previously well known as a strategy in the zombies community. Because of this, Call of the Dead is one of the only zombie maps where round 100 is entirely unobtainable. The reasons for this are complicated, but it essentially comes down to Call of Duty games having an in-game timer, and when this timer maxes out, the game resets. The boss zombie that follows the player around causes the game to run longer, and therefore is the reason that Call of the Dead round 100 is impossible. Now, I keep referring to this entity as just the boss zombie. He does have a name, however, George A. Romero, also known as the creator of the zombie. George invented the concept of the zombie with his 1968 film Night of the Living Dead. George Romero would go on to direct even more great films about his monster. Films such as The Crazies, Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, Diary of the Dead, we don't talk about this one, and Survival of the Dead, we don't talk about this one either. George A. Romero was dubbed the grandfather of zombies, and is the reason we have Call of Duty Zombies at all. All of this is attributed to him. George unfortunately passed away in 2017 at the ripe age of 77. A custom mapper by the name of Cop for That added an Easter egg to his Call of the Dead custom map that honors George, thanking him for his creation. His creation is the reason why any of us have fond memories of past zombie maps, or why any of us have careers talking about these games at all. We can never give enough credit and praise for what he did for us, and his creation, the zombie. While we're on the topic, I wanted to talk about the cast for this map. Call of the Dead is an Of the Dead map. An Of the Dead map is a map that doesn't star the main cast of characters established as being a part of the main storyline of the game. There have been a total of 3 Of the Dead maps across all of Call of Duty Zombies games. However, Call of the Dead was the first. Technically, there have been 4, but I'm sure we'll talk about that map soon enough. This is another reason why Call of the Dead really shook up the established formula of what makes a zombie map. Richtofen, Dempsey, Takio, and Nikolai are not the playable characters on this map, which was a cool idea, and a welcomed change. It helped to keep the zombie mode fresh, and fresh is always good. The cast of Call of the Dead is incredible, and I don't just mean the actors themselves. I mean their background and the films they all have been in. Danny Trejo from such films as Spy Kids and Machete. Fun fact, director Robert Rodriguez has stated that Danny Trejo played the same character in both of these films, so that's pretty cool. Call of the Dead also stars Sarah Michelle Gellar from such projects as I Know What You Did Last Summer, Scooby-Doo, and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. We also have Michael Rooker from such projects as Slither, The Walking Dead, and Guardians of the Galaxy. And he even voiced Mike Harper from the Black Ops 2 campaign. Lastly, we have Robert Englund. Now, Robert Englund has acted in many films and television shows, but he is known for playing one character in particular, and is probably the reason he was hired for his role in Call of the Dead. Robert Englund played Freddy Krueger from A Nightmare on Elm Street. All 4 of these characters are the absolute perfect casting for these roles in this zombie map. The story of the zombie map is that director George A. Romero is making a zombie film in an old, abandoned Russian-German military facility, using these 4 actors to portray his characters. While shooting the film, real zombies began to invade the set and took off with George Romero, altering his mind into becoming one of them. The 4 actors play themselves, which is another really cool idea. Richtofen and the crew are on the map, locked behind a door within the lighthouse. They need the help of our 4 protagonists to bring them back the Vril device, which is the main quest of the map. The story of the Easter egg is quite simple, but it allows us to play as these 4 incredible actors, so there are no complaints from me. Moving away from the cast and the crew, I wanted to talk about one of the defining features in Call of the Dead, and how this feature functions on this map specifically: the fog. Call of the Dead has fog all around the map, a lot of fog. It rolls in as soon as the match starts, obstructing your view of pretty much the entire map. Zombie players hate fog on zombie maps. Transit is a prime example of this hatred towards fog on zombie maps. On Transit, however, the fog is permanent. It never leaves, always obstructing the view of what is directly in front of you, which is another huge problem with Transit's implementation of fog, its performance and its density. The fog never goes away on Transit. It was implemented due to the hardware limitations at the time, which is understandable, but it's also so thick. You are unable to see anything in front of you, even objects that are only a few feet away. Call of the Dead's fog is nowhere near as thick, allowing you to see quite a bit directly in front of you, and only existing as an addition to the map's tone and atmosphere. The fog on Call of the Dead is also not permanent. It rolls away for a few rounds and returns for a few rounds. It only exists to add an element of horror to the map, as well as fear for the player, thinking that the lack of visibility could cause the player to lose track of George, and end up going down. There is one other zombie map that does this also, the Darkest Shore from Call of Duty World War II. Now, I have not played this zombie map, so I do not have first-hand experience with the fog on this map. But I do know that it rolls in and rolls out, and completely obstructs any visibility you might have. From my understanding, it is far too thick, disallowing you from seeing almost anything at all. You can hardly see zombies rushing you and could cause you to go down. It's almost impossible to navigate this map in the fog unless you know the map very well. All of these things are huge problems with the implementation of the fog on this map, all of which Call of the Dead manages to avoid by having the fog not be too dense, but dense enough to add to the atmosphere, and not detract from your ability to navigate the map, kill zombies, and survive. The tone is also amazing on this map. There is a strong element of horror constantly raising the hairs on your neck, especially when you hear George out in the fog calling for you and taunting you as he slowly makes his way through the fog to find you. George is another great addition to the tone specifically. His taunts are eerie and scary. Hearing his slow, thundering footsteps out in the fog is terrifying, and finally seeing his slight blue glow causes your stomach to turn, forcing you to move elsewhere on the map, and forces you to come up with an escape strategy. George's speed is perfect in my opinion. He's not too fast that he'll catch you in a matter of moments, but rather just slow enough to cause the fear in your mind to rise. George can get much faster though. Upon shooting him or getting too close to him, he will enter into a rage state, causing him to scream and chase after you. Running for long enough will cause him to eventually give up and slow down again, or running into ice water will have the same effect. Running into ice water can be equally dangerous, but more on that in a moment. If you decide to attempt to kill George, you'll be in for a long and tedious fight. George has 250,000 health, so I'm not joking when I say it'll be an extremely long battle. However, this fight is equally rewarding. Killing George will give you a death machine power-up. This is good to bunker down and eliminate a lot of zombies quickly, at least until about round 40 when the zombies become much stronger. However, that's not the only thing George will give you. He will also drop a perk power-up, rewarding the player with a random perk. It's recommended that the player have 4 perks before deciding to do this. You'll certainly need the perks to be able to fight him comfortably, but also, the perk power-up will add to the perks you already have, allowing you to get more than 4 perks, which is the normal perk limit, and would be very useful for a map as difficult as Call of the Dead can be. Call of the Dead would also introduce a new perk into the zombie mode, a perk that would stick with the franchise into modern zombie maps. Deadshot Daiquiri. I didn't say it was a good perk. Deadshot Daiquiri costs 1500 points, but on the PC version of Call of Duty Black Ops, it only costs 1000 points, to compensate for the lack of aim assist when using a mouse and keyboard. See, Deadshot Daiquiri's only primary function is to point your weapon directly at the zombie's critical hit location, which is their head. This is done using aim assist, which is why the PC version is discounted by 500 points. But the points don't matter because the perk is practically useless on PC anyway. Deadshot does reduce weapon sway by 35%, and completely removes weapon sway while aiming down your sights, which sounds like it could be a very useful perk in multiplayer, but not zombies. Considering that zombies will usually chase after you in hordes, there is no reason to be as accurate as the perk allows you to be, because stray bullets will just hit zombies behind the ones you're shooting. The perk can be a hindrance in some situations. If you wanted to shoot the zombie's legs to create a crawler, or just to get as many points out of a zombie before fully killing it, Deadshot would hinder you from doing this smoothly. Every time you aim down your sights, you'll be brought straight to the heads of the zombies. This might cause you to retract your aim and try again, but it would only have the same effect and do the same thing again. You could then drag your sights to the zombie's legs, but this is slow, and in a mode where quickly running zombies are chasing you, this is a bad situation to be in. And on top of all of this, the perk is pretty much useless on PC. There is no aim assist on the PC ports of these games, at least when using a mouse and keyboard. And considering that the perk relies on aim assist for its primary function to work, it wouldn't work. You would have reduced weapon spread and weapon sway, but when you can be as precise as you need to be while using a mouse, there isn't a reason for either of those benefits. The perk could be quite useful when using one of Call of the Dead's wonder weapons, however, the Scavenger. The Scavenger is a bolt-action sniper rifle that fires special explosive rounds that detonate 3 seconds after being fired. The round will stick to whatever surface it was fired at, including zombies. The Scavenger's rounds will create a large explosion that deals an impressive 11,500 damage, issuing a one-hit kill against zombies for a good number of rounds. It's also an extremely useful tool for taking out George to get an additional free perk, allowing you to exceed the map's perk limit. Considering the very large damage as well as wide splash radius, PhD Flopper is heavily recommended as it will negate self-inflicted damage with the Scavenger, making the weapon more suited at close range. There is one other wonder weapon on the map, the VR-11. When a zombie is hit by one of the VR-11's beams, it will turn into a normal human. The human will be chased around by zombies, and he will scream while he is alive. He will run away from the zombies, heading towards the closest body of water and freezing himself to death. Since he attracts zombies, he may be utilized similarly to a zombie blood, but the zombies will only chase him if he is the closest person to them. If the player is closer to the zombie than the human, the zombie will chase the player instead. Nonetheless, a couple of zombies can easily be killed, and the VR-11's effectiveness still maintains. However, the VR-11's usefulness does not end there. When upgraded through the Pack-a-Punch machine, it will become the VR-11 Lazarus. Shooting George Romero with the VR-11 Lazarus while he is in a body of water will cause him to disappear into the water. If a player shoots a zombie 3 times with the VR-11 Lazarus, it will cause the zombie to explode, killing any zombies around it at any round. If you're in a co-op game of zombies, the player could also shoot another player with the VR-11 or the VR-11 Lazarus, giving them a red-tinted screen and having zombies ignore them, letting them revive other players without interference. The VR-11 Lazarus adds a temporary insta-kill to this effect. The VR-11 and the VR-11 Lazarus can also be used to calm George if he is in an angered state. This calming effect only lasts about 15 seconds, so the player would need to vacate the area as quickly as possible, perhaps even using one of the ziplines found around the map. There are 2 ziplines on the map, one leading from the top of the lighthouse to the stern of the ship, and one from the bow of the ship to the spawn. Both of these feel like they're placed in fairly inconvenient locations. Why would anyone need to use either of these? Well, they're not on the map for traversal necessarily. They're both used as escape routes. When at the top of the lighthouse, there is nowhere to go if you were to be overrun by zombies. If you had PhD Flopper as one of your 4 perks, you could just jump off the lighthouse to safety. But what if you didn't? This is why the ziplines are placed where they are. The lighthouse is impossible to escape from, so the zipline makes sense here. The zipline at the bow of the ship also makes sense, because there is nowhere to jump off of if you did have PhD Flopper anyway. The zipline would be your only escape. This isn't true. There is literally a flinger right there. Right there! I don't know what I was thinking when I wrote and recorded that line. Anyway, completely false information, fake news, moving on. Plus, it's fun to use, so that's a bonus. As for the Pack-a-Punch machine, there isn't a quest that needs to be completed to get access to it. It will simply spawn and despawn. There are several spawn locations around the map, and the lighthouse's light will point toward the location, guiding you to the Pack-a-Punch machine. This is such a cool mechanic, and I'd love to see something similar to it in future zombie maps. The problem is that the Pack-a-Punch machine will only spawn in water, which is also one of the map's downfalls. The water has a function. Whenever George is aggroed, you can lead him to the ice water and he will permanently calm down until he is aggroed again. However, besides this functionality, the water's only purpose is to slow you down and hinder your survival. This decision is one of the reasons why many people dislike this map, or at least why many people would not put Call of the Dead in their top 10 favorite zombie maps. I hate when zombie maps slow you down, or rather, put in roadblocks to slow you down. I am reminded of Shinonuma and the mud all around that map. The mud's purpose, and only purpose, is to slow you down and try to kill you. It's part of the reason I almost cannot stand playing that map. I am also reminded of Origins and the mud all around that map. Again, the mud's only purpose is to hinder you and to get you killed on an already difficult map. It's the exact reason why Origins is not my #1 zombie map of all time. It certainly could be. Everything about Origins I love. Absolutely everything. But the mud is incredibly annoying to maneuver through. I know some people will call it a skill issue, and you're right. If you can practice for long enough, the map can be learned, and the mud can be maneuvered through properly. But to me, all it does is prevent gamers of a more casual level from never wanting to play the map again, and that's absolutely what you do not want. But that's for another video. Call of the Dead suffers from the same problem. It does have the benefit of serving a purpose beyond hindering the player from succeeding, unlike the before-mentioned maps. But beyond the purpose of slowing down George, it serves no other purpose. Another issue I have with Call of the Dead is its Easter egg. It is very simple. It is essentially a couple of fetch quests over and over again until the Easter egg is complete. However, I cannot discredit this Easter egg too much because it was also the first single-player Easter egg ever made. Ascension and Shangri-La require 4 players minimum. I think in Black Ops, Moon required 2 players. Call of the Dead had 2 separate quests for you to complete depending on if you were playing solo or co-op, which is a really cool idea. I also cannot discredit Call of the Dead's Easter egg too much because it is a product of its time. This was the second main quest Easter egg ever put into the zombie mode, and the idea that you are playing as 4 incredible actors instead of the Ultimus crew from the previous few maps is so cool. And the idea that you are helping the Ultimus crew who are trapped behind a door is a great idea. So much of this map comes together perfectly. Sure, there are some things I don't love about Call of the Dead. The water slowing you down, the wonder weapons mostly being underwhelming, the fact that George never stops following you, and I'd rather there be no fog and snow at all. However, overall I adore this map. The tone, story, acting, level design, and the Easter egg song easily make it a top 10 map for me. I can understand why some people might not have it in their top 10, but I will never be able to understand why some people just flat out hate this map. Unfortunately, we've never seen a zombie map quite like it over 12 years later. Maybe one day we'll get to play that Zombies Chronicles 2 we were promised so long ago. I know we'll eventually get to play Zombies Chronicles 2 via the custom maps being made for the PC version, thanks to Mr. T Lexify and all of the mappers, modders, and scripters he's working with. But at the end of the day, this is why I believe Call of the Dead to be an amazing zombie map.